Welcome to the 2-Pint Software DeployR Prerequisites Guide. In this guide we will be covering the prerequisites that are required to install DeployR. There are 3 guides in this series. The DeployR Prerequisites Guide is the first guide in the series. The DeployR iPXE Anywhere Installation Guide is the second guide in the series and is required for PXE booting or the creation of self-signed certificates. The DeployR Installation Guide is the last guide in the series. Complete each guide in sequence before proceeding to the next. The DeployR prerequisites include Windows Server 2019 or above with Microsoft.NET version 4.8 or higher. Administrator rights. Visual C++ Runtime is only required if you plan on installing 2 PXE Server. A SQL database and permissions. Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. .NET Runtime. .NET Desktop Runtime, ASP.NET Core Runtime and PowerShell 7.4. Before starting the DeployR installation, there are a few things to consider. If you are still deploying desktops, laptops, and servers that are domain-joined, then DeployR should be installed on a domain-joined server. DeployR can securely join systems to a domain using offline domain join. Other methods can be used to join systems to a domain that do not require the DeployR server to be a part of the domain, however, these are less secure. DeployR uses certificates. These certificates can be from a public certificate provider, an internal PKI, or self-signed certificates. 2-Pint Software 2 PXE Server can be used to generate the required self-signed certificates and is covered in the iPXE Anywhere Installation Guide. Visual C++ Runtime. Note, this is only required if you plan on installing 2 PXE Server. Search for Visual C++ Redistributable and click on the link that says Latest Supported Visual C++ Redistributable Downloads. Scroll down the page and then click on the x64 version to download it. Once the download completes, click on Open File to run the installer. Agree to the license terms and then click Install. SQL Express. Search for SQL Express 2022 and click on the link that says Microsoft SQL Server 2022 Express. Click on the Download button. Once the download completes, click on Open File to run the installer. Click on the basic installation type. Accept the license terms. Leave the default installation location and click Install. Once the installation completes, leave the defaults and then click on Install SSMS. On the Install SQL Server Management Studio page, scroll down about halfway. Under Step 2, locate and click on the Download SSMS 21 link. Once the download completes, click on Open File to run the installer. Click on the Install button in the lower right corner. Once the installation is finished, restart the system. Create the SQL Firewall rules, Install IIS and BranchCache. Open an elevated PowerShell window. Run the PowerShell commands from the documentation for creating the firewall rules for SQL. Next, run the PowerShell command from the documentation for installing IIS and BranchCache. Create the SQL permissions. Open SQL Server Management Studio. At the prompt, click on Skip and add accounts later. At the Connection dialog prompt, click No. For encryption, select Optional and then click on Connect. Expand the Security node, then the Logins node, then right-click on NT Authority System, and select Properties. Click on the Server Roles page, enable DB Creator, and then click OK. Change the SQL Server Express startup type to Automatic. Locate and right-click on the SQL Server SQL Express service and select Properties. Change the startup type to Automatic and click OK. Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. Run the ADK setup to launch the installer. Leave the default install path and click Next. On the privacy notice, click Next. Accept the license agreement. Unselect all features except deployment tools and click Install. Note, if you plan on using the Entra-Join task sequence, leave the Imaging and Configuration Designer enabled. Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit Pre-Installation Environment Add-ons. Run the ADK WinPE setup to launch the installer. Leave the defaults on the Specify Location page and click Next. On the Privacy notice, click Next. Accept the license agreement and then click Install. ASP.NET Core Runtime 8.0, .NET Desktop Runtime 8.0, and .NET Runtime 8.0. From the 2-Pint software documentation, click on the DeployR link. Under Setup, click on the Prerequisites section. Right-click on the Download from Microsoft link next to the .NET 8.0 components, and select Open Link in a new tab. Note, the versions on this page get updated as new versions of DeployR get released. Open the new tab and click on the x64 download link under the ASP.NET Core Runtime section for the Windows OS. Once the download is complete, click on Open File to launch the installer. On the Welcome page, accept the license terms and click Install. When the install finishes, click the Close button. Click the Back button in the browser to return to the previous page and click on the x64 download link under the .NET Desktop Runtime section. Once the download is complete, click on Open File to launch the installer. Click the Install button to start the install. When the install finishes, click the Close button. Click the Back button in the browser to return to the previous page and click on the x64 download link under the .NET Runtime section for the Windows OS. Once the download is complete, click on Open File to launch the installer. Click the Install button to start the install. When the install finishes, click the Close button. PowerShell 7.4. Back on the DeployR prerequisites page, right-click on the Download from Microsoft link next to the PowerShell 7.4 release, and select Open link in a new tab. Note, the version of PowerShell 7.4 gets updated as new versions of DeployR get released. Open the new tab and then scroll down towards the bottom of the page. Click on either the EXE or MSI download link for WinX64. Once the download is complete, click on Open File to launch the installer. On the Welcome page, click Next to start the install. On the Destination folder page, leave the default and click Next. On the Optional Actions page, leave the defaults and click Next. On the Microsoft Update page, leave the defaults and click Next. On the Ready to Install page, click Install. Thank you for watching the DeployR Prerequisites Guide. You are now ready for the DeployR iPXE Anywhere installation guide if using iPXE Anywhere or required the creation of self-signed certificates. Otherwise, you are ready for the DeployR installation guide. If you have any questions or issues, feel free to reach out to us.